Hello BookTube. It's Saturday and I planned to stay in all day and just read and do sort of house chores, but I went to meet a friend, and as you do, you wind up in charity shops and bookshops. So I have a few things to show you, mostly bargain books, £1, £2. And let's just start it off. Here's a country calendar by Flora Thompson, and it's it's a bit faded on the spine, but it's a Oxford publication. It's a selection of her writings, selected and edited by Margaret Lane, with line drawings by Claire Roberts. Oxford University Press. Originally in 1979, this is a 1980 reprint, and most may know Flora Thompson from her Candle Rise to, or what is it called? Lark Rise to Candleford, and there's a TV show of that as well, but this is more sort of diary entries and other little bits and pieces, so that should be a fun read. And this is my never-ending collection of Batsfords. This is the Etruscans. They did a whole series. It's Everyday Life series. And as you can see on the back cover, there's quite a few of them. I don't have that many. It's not generally the covers that I collect, but even so, it's one of them. It's faded quite a bit on the spine, but still quite nice. It's 1973. So it's past the heyday of Batsford's beautiful covers that I love. But it's, yeah, Everyday Life of the Etruscans by Ellen McNamara, drawings by Eva Wilson. And there's the frontispiece and the title page. And I've always liked the idea of Christmas, so this one was there. Christmas Past. Gavin Whiteman and Steve Humphries, and it looks like it must have been it's got LWT, which is usually London Weekend Television, so it must have been based on the London Weekend Television production, and it's the company, the program. Take a fresh look at the rise of our single most important national festival. It is the first ever study from living memory of how this relatively new festival spread through Britain in the 20th century. Tapping personal recollections and little-known documentary sources, the authors explain how most of the trappings of the modern Christmas are not, as in often imagined, ancient traditions, but the invention of the Victorians. So yeah. So that should be. I have a small little collection of books about Christmas and Christmas memories. This is actually Sedgwick and Jackson, published in 1987. I don't remember ever seeing the TV show, so I'll have to actually look that up. It might be interesting to watch as well. Another one, sort of a culling of things. It's In the Country, 250 years of country life in paintings, prose, and poetry. Ellen Buckle and Derek Lord. It's New English Library. Again, a bit faded on the spine, but it's quite nice. And yeah, it's just literally a full collection of pulled from magazines, books of the period. Delightful cameos of village life with its gossip, its colorful characters, and those diverse yet equally vital establishments, the village church and the village pub. Published, as I say, New English Library in 1979, and there's an example of some of the drawings, so that's quite nice actually. I like the etchings that are in it. There's even full colored ones that are really nice, and they're just quite short snippets, so it'll be something that's nice to sort of sit down and spend maybe 10-15 minutes. Probably that's more than about more than about 15 or 20 minutes to do. Well, okay, there's one here that's maybe about 6 or 7 pages long, so maybe like even slow reading, maybe half an hour occasionally, but most likely a few minutes here and there. So that'd be a nice addition. Writers of East Anglia, selected and edited by Angus Wilson. There's a list of the contributors on the back. It's a cache of writing from the Eastern region. Is a store of talent containing both the new and untested and the established and proven. Writers such as Hammond Innes and David Holbrook reveal new facets of themselves. Lorenz van der Post tells of Edward Seago, the East Anglian artist, and so on and so on. I like it. Lorenz van der Post did, was it The Search of the Kalahari? Venture to the Interior is a good one. They're sort of, he went back, this is in the 40s and 50s, I think, in Africa, in sort of sub-Saharan Africa, just doing little travels, and I just really enjoyed reading those about 35, 40 years ago. This is a collection. I think it's all nonfiction, so it's just basically essays, so it'll be a addition to my essay collection, and see how it goes. This I got to look into a little more. My early years, Charles Chaplin. Again, this was a cheap book. It's The Bodily Head, I believe. Yeah, The Bodily Head. 1964 it says, but that's from my autobiography. Oh, okay, yeah, so it does say in here. It's just the first part of Chaplin's My Autobiography from 64, done just his early years. It's a reprint from 1979. That's fine. It's a first in this, The Bodily Head. So that's okay. It's a nice copy, and I'll add that to my few books on Chaplin there. Never heard of this poet before. Bernard Gutteridge, The Traveller's Eye, Poems. It's a little rough on the jacket. It's a very slim volume of poetry. It's Routledge, London. Let's see what year. 1947. And it runs into 65 pages, basically 64, 65 pages. And just reading a little bits of it, it seemed interesting, but it was worth the £1, I think it was. Yeah, it's for it. And another collection of essays, Reflections in a Mirror, second series, Charles Morgan. And I just I snap up anything that's £1 or £2 that are essays, and then especially if they're on topics, if they're literature, book reviews, or just what I call occasional essays, where you just one of my favorites is I'm trying to think of his name now. The guy who wrote anyway, it's just gone from my mind. But it just there's a little essay about somebody just in bed thinking that if he had a long enough pencil, he could just draw on the ceiling. But it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful little essay. And this is Reflections in a Mirror. A first selection of Mr. Charles Morgan's essays was published in November 1944. Consists chiefly essays from the series Meander's Mirror, which for over 2.5 years Mr. Morgan contributed weekly to the Times literary supplement. So yeah, so it's going to be literary essays, book reviews. It's a reprint from 1954, originally 46, by Macmillan and Company. But yeah, so that should be interesting as well. There's a huge list of more of his books on the back. If I find that I really like him, then I can search for more. This was kind of interesting. I'd never seen this before. The Origin of Pickwick by Walter Dexter and J.W.T. Leigh. It's 1936 Pickwick Centenary. And it says, 100 years ago, the first part of the new novel appeared. It was to be published in 20 monthly parts. This was the famous Pickwick Papers. And the authors of The Origins of Pickwick are the two greatest authorities on Dickens. In it are the fruits of their investigations over a period of a quarter century. Many hitherto unpublished documents are brought to light so that the true story of what has hitherto been subject to much controversy here given for the first time. It looks quite interesting. It says, new facts from the first published in the year of the centenary by Walter Dexter and J.W.T. Leigh, Chapman and Hall, Dickens' original publishers, 1936. So that's kind of interesting. And the reason why I grabbed this specifically is because I can't reach it here, but I've got a big book on a novel that somebody has written. I posted it on Instagram, and it's basically he's saying that he's giving the true story of Pickwick Papers. And I thought that was quite interesting, so I picked that up as a remainder last year with a bunch of other stuff. So this could be a nice read along in conjunction. I'd probably have to read Pickwick again, read this, and then read the new novel. But that should be a fun little endeavor. This one looks interesting. Consuming Passions, A History of English Food and Appetite, Philippa Pollard. And it's nice hardcover. Again, £1. It's a book club associates for 1970, but it's perfectly fine. It's like I say, I take this over any day over anything that's printed today. Basically, it's sewn, which most hardcovers today are not sewn. It is paper covered boards. It's not cloth, but it's still quite nice. And for £1, even if it's in print, there's no way you could get that for £1 in paperback. So that'll be quite interesting. I have to watch my pile doesn't fall over here. And this was kind of surprising to see for £1. Unlocking the Air and Other Stories, Ursula K. Le Guin. It's basically a brand new copy. It's not science fiction or fantasy. It says it's a collection of mainstream stories, which have been published in such distinguished magazines as the New Yorker, Harper's, Omni, and Playboy, is a stunning example of the virtuosity of the legendary Ursula K. Le Guin. It is a small book, and it lists all her... She was quite prolific. HarperCollins, publishers, 1996. It says first edition, but it's actually third printing because the numbers don't match up, but I'm not too concerned about that. But that should be interesting because I don't think I've ever read anything of her that's sort of the mainstream publishing, so that should be interesting. And here's another David Attenborough I found. Again, I can't pass this up. It's Journeys to the Past. It's in almost perfect condition. This is a reprint, I believe, of 3 previous ones that were done in the 60s or 50s. Oh, that's too bad. The volume comprises abridged versions of Zoo Quest to Madagascar, Quest to Paradise, and Quest Under Capricorn. Oh, that's too bad. They're abridged versions. So I'll have to look for the other. I thought, this is cool. And then there's another volume. It says that it's a companion for Zoo Quest volumes. Yeah, the Zoo Quest editions. But oh well. As I say, for £1, that's fine until I can find the other ones, the nice editions. It's Lutterworth Press, Guildford, Surrey, 1981. So yeah. And Regency, let's see how I'm doing for time here. Not too bad. Regency Furniture by Clifford Musgrave. Again, it's just a nicely illustrated book. And it even, for £1, like, I suppose I took it in some ways I'm not a aficionado of furniture by any means, but it's got that. And I think there's a few other photos of bookcases that I saw. So that was why I grabbed it. I can't find the other the other photos. It's a little it's got a bit of a smell to it, but it's not a musty smell, which is thankfully. But yeah, it's published. It's Regency Furniture, 1880, or sorry, 1880, 1800 to 1830 by Clifford Musgrave, and it was published by Faber and Faber in 1961, and it's got a few color illustrations in it, but most is black and white. In the back here, a whole section of black and white photos, which are quite nice, even so. But as I say, I picked it up mainly for the bookcases that they were showing. And here's one. The cover's quite awful, but it's eye-catching, I suppose. But it goes back to 1852 to today. It's the pinup from 1852 to today. So it's a garish cover, but again, you know, £1. And the main thing is the early stuff that'll be interesting, and I don't know if it's something I'll wind up keeping, but it'll be a fun look through. There you go, pinups from, it doesn't give me what year, but you know, it goes right up to today. But it's mostly everything I'll be interested into probably will be finished before 1950. But yeah, and this here one, I used to see this everywhere. It's not the best, but it's in really nice condition, and it was £2. Winston Churchill, The Highland Race. It's a big honker. It's that's 1964. Castle and Dot Mead and Company. I think it's part of Castle group. But yeah, it's quite nice. It's well illustrated, and as I say, for £2, I could not pass that up. Now, another one on books. This was a little more, but not much. It's a history of book illustration by David Bland. Jacket's quite rough. It's Faber and Faber. It's got tipped-in plates. It's the illuminated manuscript and the printed book, 1958. Pardon me. Mostly black and white illustrations, but there are a number of colored ones and many of them are tipped in. So that was actually quite nice. Let's see what else I got here. Again, some of these are these weren't the £1 and £2, but they weren't much more. This is the London Hanged, Crime and Civil Society in the 18th Century, Peter Linebaugh. So yeah, it's Allen Lane publication. I believe it's Allen Lane. Yeah, Allen Lane. 1991. And from the flap here, it says, in 18th century London, the gallows at Tyburn was the dramatic focus of a struggle between the rich and poor. Pardon me. Most of the London hanged were executed for property crimes, and the chief lesson that the gallows had to teach was respect private property. The executions took place amid a London populace that knew the same poverty and hunger as the condemned. Indeed, in this stimulating account, Peter Linebaugh shows how there is little distinction between a criminal population and the poor population of London as a whole. Necessity drove the city's poor into inevitable conflict with the laws of the privileged ruling class. So that definitely, I think this will probably be a keeper that will go into my London collection. This one was a bargain book. The Edge of the World, How the North Sea Made Us Who We Are, Michael Pyle. It is Viking, an imprint of Penguin Books, and 2014, and story of saints and spies, fishermen, pirates, traders, marauders, and of how their wild and daring journeys across the North Sea built the world we know. And a big part, like there's the chapter headings, is the invention of money, but then there's a whole chapter on book trade. So that clinched it for me to take it, and it's got some nice, a few colored inserts. So yeah, so that will probably be a keeper as well. This one's quite interesting. It's Children of Bondage, a social history of the slave society at the Cape of Good Hope, 1652 to 1838, by Robert C.H. Schell. It's by Witwatersrand University Press, Johannesburg. So it's a South African publication. So I definitely couldn't pass that up because you don't see that many here. But yeah, it's in every chapter, Schell casts light on neglected topics such as the architectural, linguistic, theological, sexual, and psychological aspect of Cape slavery, or rethinks old ones, like the origins of the slaves or the economic basis of South African slavery. A product of massive research and careful reflection, this study will quickly assume a dominating position in the historiography of early South Africa. And that was written by Richard Elphick, History Department at Wesleyan University. So, yeah, paperback. As far as I can tell, I think it was a paperback original. There's nothing saying that hardcover edition. So, let's see here. A Merciless Place, The Lost Story of Britain's Convict Disaster in Africa, by Emmett Christopher. And that was Oxford University Press, 2011. Yeah, it's just the story of the British colonial disaster on the slave coast of West Africa that led to the foundation of Australia. An intriguing and horrifying tale lost for 200 years and now told for the first time. So that should be quite interesting. And The Hanging Tree, Execution and the English People, 1770 to 1868, by V.A.C. Gatrell. Sort of goes with that other one, criminal one in London. Another hardcover. And it's Oxford again. And 1994. And like I said, hanging people for small crimes as well as grave. The bloody penal code was at its most active between 1770 and 1830. Some 7,000 men and women were executed on public scaffolds then, watched by crowds of thousands. Hanging was confined to murders thereafter, but these were still killed in public until 1868. Clearly the gallows loomed over much of social life in this period. But how did those who watched, read about, or ordered these strangulations feel about the terror and suffering inflicted in the law's name? What kind of justice was delivered, and how did it change? The book is the first to explore what the wide range of people felt about these ceremonies, rather than what the few famous men taught and wrote about them. So yeah, that should be, again, quite interesting, and I think this will be a keeper in my collection, unless it turns out that it looks quite academic. So sometimes academic stuff is unreadable. Maybe a great scholarly writer, but it's not that easy to read. That's about it. There's a few other things that I picked up just, here and there. Charity shops, little bits and pieces, some paperbacks for almost nothing. But yeah, so that's my little haul today. And I have to figure out where to put these. Like I say, I'm hoping that maybe half that I'll wind up keeping, but they're all of interest, and it just would be nice to have them all, because I enjoy having the books around me, and it would be nice to continue to pull them off and delve into them as time goes on. But anyway, I'll let you go, BookTube. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your reading.